Every nation has a youth rating out of 200, and this number determines the quality of player that this nation produces. Nations like Samoa are really low, and countries like Cameroon are sitting around the midpoint. And naturally, Brazil have the highest at 163. But not anymore, because I have set every nation to 200 out of 200, and I've simulated 100 years. And we're going to see whether the regular nations that we know dominate the international competitions, or we're going to see some of the smaller, lesser known nations for football who might come up and start to win some competitions. Like Wales.
How dare you?
So first off, I've skipped 10 years, and obviously we're not going to see too much difference here, and as we can see, not a lot of difference in the World Cup winners. Because there's only 10 years, you got to give the nations a chance to produce these players. So far, France won the 2022, Holland, or the Netherlands, have won the 2026 for their first time, which is obviously fantastic, and Germany in 2030. But if we do go across to the player search, we can start to see some of this play into effect. Now, Norway do have an okay youth rating to begin with. Obviously, they have created Erling Haaland as one player who's still at Manchester City here, and is the highest current ability player in this database, and I've got the in-game editor open so I can see that. But the second highest is also Norwegian, and he is a new gen as well, Lars Ulrik, and he plays for Real Madrid. A very talented centre-back, very good mentals and physical attributes. But there's quite a lot of these players at the top here who play for Real Madrid. We got another one here from Switzerland, a goalkeeper who's fantastic, age 24, and a Colombian player who is an unbelievable striker, also playing for Real Madrid. So I do wonder whether they have been winning a lot of Champions Leagues, and I can see 18 Champions Leagues won now. They won it 2 years ago, they've won it twice in the last 6 years. And Norway as a nation are sitting in 12th in the world rankings. Now, other things that can affect how good the players are that come through youth academies in a country is, of course, the clubs. If the clubs have zero youth importance rates, then they're not going to really focus on bringing through the best players, as well as the facilities. And that's the reason why a lot of these lesser known nations won't grow as high as what we hope, because they don't have the competition, they don't have the facilities, and the clubs just aren't interested in bringing these players through. But I did also change the state of development to developed for every nation, as well as the game importance to maximum. And these are the other two things which involve the nation itself, which have a big influence on how good the new gens are that come through each nation. 30 years into the future then, we're 2052, and Ecuador are World Cup winners in 2050. Quite impressive. And in fact, we've actually got a couple of back-to-back surprises, I'd say, in the World Cup, with Switzerland winning the year before, and even Croatia the year before that, with Bulgaria as runners-up. So we are starting to get these nations coming through now, which you wouldn't particularly expect to win the World Cup, for example. Now, Ecuador, where are they ranked in the world? So they are ranked in 7th place, which is rather high for Ecuador. We've got Spain still at the top, and to be honest, other than Senegal, that's kind of what you'd expect. So Senegal's done really well in Africa to manage to get as high as 4th place there. And as you go down, you kind of see the regular names. We're not really noticing anybody too obscure as we go down. I guess it's down to those clubs that also need to produce the players. And speaking of players, it is once again a Norwegian who is the best player in the world according to current ability, and he's playing for Liverpool. 5'5", 22-year-old left midfielder who is unbelievable and still has potential to get better as well, so which he probably will be if he's only 22. The second highest is playing at Manchester United, 180, so there is a big gap in between there. But we do have our first unique nation that we have here, Burkina Faso. Issa Kabore, who is a centre-back, also playing for Liverpool, who may be dominating, who knows. And we also have an Uzbekistan player who is currently at Manchester United, and he is opting to leave. I hate that. John Aldridge, that's quite a famous name, but he was an Australian, and he also wasn't a centre-back. So John Aldridge coming from Brisbane Roar, which, see, this is what I like. They're coming from the actual clubs in those nations as well, that we can see here as well. The Uzbekistani player, exactly the same as that. The last thing we're going to look at is the reason why Senegal is so high is because they have completely dominated the AFCON for about 5 times there. Morocco only just taking it off them, with them finishing in the runners-up position. And they were runners-up the year before they won that as well, the competition before that. So that's the reason why Senegal are so high. So you can understand why that's put them so high. Their key player is a 30-year-old now. Maybe not quite as good as the players that they had previously, which took them to those heights. Okay, we are now 50 years into the future, and Uruguay, the very first winners of the World Cup, are once again champions of the world. And they have beaten Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland in the final. Well done. Mexico there have finished as winners, and I believe, we also have our first ever African winner of the World Cup. Fantastic from Morocco. And I think Mexico, because they are Central America, but they kind of count towards North America. They're the first from North America. So we're still waiting on an Asian winner of the World Cup. So hopefully we'll see that in the next 100 years. Let's take a look then. Where are Uruguay ranked in the world? They are ranked first. Wow, okay. Maybe they're winning Copa America as well. We've got Portugal second, Nigeria are third. Very high for the Nigerians. Canada there in seventh, with the US right behind them. But again, Northern Ireland, there's not a lot of like really obscure nations like the islands, like small islands. Cape Verde Islands is quite high up considering. So that's quite good from them. African Cup of Nations, once again, Senegal has won the last two. Tunisia, and there is Cape Verde. So Cape Verde have won the 2065 African Cup of Nations, and they were third place in the following two tournaments as well. That's really the first time that I've seen somebody rather obscure win one of the African Cup of Nations. Similar story with the Euros. Austria have just won the last Euros in 2072, the year that we're actually in, beating Greece in the final. Denmark have won it recently too. Czech Republic, Switzerland. So there hasn't been too many upsets, but there are still some smaller nations who haven't really won a lot of international competitions who have won the Euros recently. Now, China are the current Asian Nations Cup, which obviously they have one of the biggest countries in the world, if not the biggest. South Korea, Syria. A couple of Syria wins here, which is quite impressive. And obviously we've got Qatar, UAE, some other nations which you don't usually see winning things. Iran, I think Iran's won it. Yeah, they won it quite a lot in the past. But these are the nations that we're starting to see some players come through. So let's take a look at the players and see if it's... We have a Japanese player as the highest rated current ability player in the world. Kumagai is a goalkeeper. Oh my god, he is eccentric. 20 out of 20, which usually is quite a bad thing, but he does still look rather good. He's playing for Bayern Munich, 31 years of age, and he is almost at his full potential there. We've got a Peruvian at Chelsea, who is the next best player in the world, a New Zealand player, Sam Little-Withers, playing for Manchester City up front. He is rather good as well. Turkish, we've got Greek, a few Portuguese, Slovenian, so then it goes down to what you would usually see. No really obscure nations coming through. Let's take a look at the Ballon d'Or though and see who's been winning. We've got that lad from New Zealand, Uruguay. So there are a few nations who have managed to win the Ballon d'Or with a player from that nation, obviously. Obviously, they tend to be at the biggest clubs in Europe. Bulgarian there. We've got a few from Uruguay have come through. I think it's the same guy. I'm not really looking at the names, to be honest. I'm more really concentrating on the nation. Salvadorian, that's the most unique one so far, with Henry Rodriguez, a Nugent who was playing at Barcelona. A couple of Danish there, and then we tend to go on the usual players. Nice. The Kvaradona lad has won it from PSG, so that's good. 2092, we are 70 years into the future, and I have brought you back for one specific reason, and I'll show you that in a sec. Now, the Ivory Coast was the second African country to win a World Cup, so fair play to them. They managed to get in a few years after Morocco there. Venezuela and Ecuador going back-to-back there for South America. Fantastic stuff. And then it's kind of been what we would usually see, Spain and Italy there, with a third place finish from France, hosted by England. So that wouldn't have been great for the English. But if we take a look at the world rankings, Spain, who have just won it, are 6th, because the United States of America are the #1 ranked country in the world. Now, this is always, it's never really like to take this as gospel, is it? Like, there's always some kind of this, I don't really believe it, but if Zealand ever made it to 2092, there will be tears streaming down his face that United States are ranked #1. We got Egypt there in 8th place which is also quite amazing. And would you believe it, if we take a look at the Euros, which there is a competition going on right now, Wales won it in 2084. I took the mick out of them earlier. The Welsh were in the comments section, but they proved me wrong. They won, is England? Yeah, England won one in 2032. They've been runners-up a lot of times, but Wales won one in 2084. Very impressive. Now, the final is going to be played soon. I'll come back a little bit too early here, between either one of these four clubs. And we've got clubs, nations. Northern Ireland are facing England in the semi-final there. That would be an interesting one. And the African Cup of Nations seems to have been dominated by Morocco. Okay, then, we're looking at the players, and we have a Chilean as the best player in the world. That ranking is going down lower, though, and once again, it is a goalkeeper. 176 is definitely not the highest I've seen. Qatari player. Is he from Qatar? He did. He come through one of the Qatar clubs that we can see before moving to Bayern Munich and then Real Madrid. We also have a Northern Irish player. Did he come through the Northern Ireland League? He did, with Lan, which is quite cool. Saudi Arabia player. Wow. And he actually come through Al Shabab. Impressive once again. They're not the best looking players, obviously, because they're down in the 160s now, but it is still cool to see. We will now go to the final stop of this video, 100 years into the future, so make sure you consider subscribing if you haven't done so. 100 years into the future then, and Mexico have just won the World Cup, beating Serbia in the final 3-2. We've got Brazil winning it the time before that, Venezuela win, and even the Northern Irish are managing to pick themselves up a World Cup 101 years after the death of George Best. Quite nice. India there in third place. We'll catch up with them in a second. We won't take a look at the world rankings just yet. The African Cup of Nations has been won by Guinea in the last time that it happened, the year before now. We've got Egypt, who are the usual culprits, alongside quite a lot of the actual usual culprits there to win it, but that's quite an interesting one. The Copa America, the holders currently are Colombia, who beat Uruguay in the final. We got Venezuela, a couple of wins there for Chile, and then it's the usual culprits that you tend to see winning this competition. But it's the Euros, which is probably going to cause the biggest controversy, because England have won the previous 5 competitions.
Oh my God!
Every single time in the last 20 years they have managed to win the Euros. Belgium then winning it the time before that with 2 back-to-back wins from Northern Ireland again. They must have been really good at the turn of the century, but unfortunately it is completely dominated by England, who, yeah, they've done rather well. I was quite interested. You're going to see their world ranking there. They've had a lot of different managers who have managed to do it. So it's not just the fact that they've had an overpowered manager. They've managed to really win it with just loads of different managers. Probably the biggest surprise, though, is the Asian Nations Cup. If you take a look at the past winners, India have won it back-to-back there, which is the first time that we're really seeing India in this whole series. And they are... It took them 100 years. So it took them 100 years, and they've finally really started to kick in. They are ranked 49th in the world. Let's take a look at them then. We've got Portugal, who are first. England, despite winning the Euros 5 times in a row, they must have had a really bad World Cup, because currently their manager just got sacked. But England there are in second place, ahead of Northern Ireland in third. And then again, not a lot has changed here. Australia are up to 12th. Bolivia, that's a very high position for Bolivia. I think they would definitely be happy with that. We've got Wales down in 18th there. That's quite high, as well as Algeria as well. One final time, then let's take a look at the players. And the best player in the world, it's not from the Northern Ireland. He is second, is a Paraguayan player. Unbelievable player as well. A striker. He's 31. He's 6'8". I can't believe my eyes. He is actually 6'8". He is unbelievable. He is so good. He's come through Paraguay's youth academy clubs as well, and then he's moved to Manchester City and played for a very long time. Or 2 years? No, it's 13 years that he's played there. Lorenzo Gonzalez, an unbelievable talent who is 6'8". That is astonishing. Right, we've got a Northern Irish player here in Sean Wallace, 187. Again, a fantastic player. A Saudi Arabian player there, not bad. He's a left back as well. Honduran, that's the first time that we've seen a player from that nation come through. But again, a Guatemalan. Guatemala there with an unbelievable centre midfielder. I like to see that. And finally, we have a Chinese player down here as well, playing for Manchester City in goal. Now, I do know that there is a rule in China where you have to use a Chinese goalkeeper. So eventually, they're bound to get a world-class goalkeeper come through. And Beijing had that world-class goalkeeper before he moved to America, Turkey, and then Manchester City. So there we have it then. I hope you enjoyed this video. On screen will be another video where I put San Marino as the best country in the world and see if I could win a World Cup with them. I'll see you in that one.